Okay, we're recording. Just to give you a little bit about my background, I'm the owner of High Fidelity Properties. We're a residential property management company. I have been in property management for 15 years and I own rental properties myself. And then just a little bit about my company. We're 10 years old. Our portfolio consists of single family homes, duplexes, fourplexes, and condo units, and we manage 125 doors. We cover the full gamut of property management services and also offer a bunch of extras. My goal is to take you through the financial factors your clients will need to consider with a rental property. We'll cover analyzing a potential deal, considerations around rent, typical expenses, we'll look at income statements, and I'll share some tenant expectations. I'll also share tips and insights along the way based on my 15 years of experience in investing in property management. We'll look at a couple of spreadsheets, and when we send you the recording of this webinar, we'll include those spreadsheets. None of this is rocket science, and it's basic math, but what I hope to offer is a full overview and some tools that you can use. In December, we did a presentation on purchasing rental properties that tenants will love. That's not the subject of this webinar, but certainly important to factor in when considering any home as an investment. Not all homes or neighborhoods make for great rentals, and there are certain features tenants want and others that they don't want or don't care about that aren't worth spending money on. The super condensed version is to encourage your clients to go for a single family home or condo with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms with a cookie cutter layout in neighborhoods that have other rentals. So there you go, an entire webinar condensed into one sentence. Okay, let's dig in. We'll start with analyzing a prospective property. When you're analyzing a property that you don't yet own, you have no history with it and you don't know its repair history, so you make certain assumptions and you fill out a worksheet the best that you can. Later, we'll go into the details of those expenses so you can see everything that's entailed. Now, I appreciate that you may be thinking that Austin is not the best market for investors right now, but I have 2 things to say to that. 1, investors are buying here. In Manor, Round Rock, Pflugerville, and yeah, even in Austin. I have several new clients who just bought here in Austin. And 2, while you may not have clients buying rental properties right now, you may very well have existing clients who are moving or moving out of town and considering their home as a rental. Now, you may secretly hope that they sell, but they may want to take advantage of Austin's great rental market, and this information will enable you to help them make a really good decision. My goal is to empower you to be a champ for your clients. In order to fill out an investment analysis worksheet, information you'll want to gather are price, loan details, insurance, HOA dues, repair and maintenance costs, property management fees, and leasing fees. Of course, some may not apply to your client. To come up with an average monthly cost for repairs and maintenance, I actually ran a report on all of the properties in our portfolio, and the average cost is $150 per month. I used to use $100 per month, but that just doesn't seem to be accurate anymore. Of course, such factors as age, condition, and size mean that each home or condo is different, and so $150 per month is truly just an average. If your clients are paying cash, as may be necessary in this market, then cash flowing obviously becomes a much easier proposition. Okay, I'm going to move over to the investment analysis spreadsheet. And remember, we'll send you this spreadsheet, so don't worry about it. Just give me a second here while I make that transition. Okay, can you guys see the investment analysis worksheet? Great, okay. So as you can see at the bottom here, there are 3 tabs in this worksheet. There's a template, which is blank, and then there's 2 samples that I'll go through with you. So with the template, you can, make copies so that if you're working with multiple clients or for whatever reason, or if you just want to keep the template pristine so you don't sort of muck up any of the formulas. And then we're just going to go straight into this the second tab, a sample with no mortgage. So I put in 3 properties that as of last week were active on the market. And the first columns are just information for you to put in. This isn't being calculated anywhere down the line, but it's just so that way you can keep track of the property, the MLS number, when it was built, square footage, how many bedrooms and bathrooms. Now, there are spreadsheets out there that will take the square footage and calculate dollars per square foot. There are spreadsheets that calculate things like cap rates and all sorts of other things, but that's not really necessary for the purpose of this worksheet. And this is really geared towards 1 to 4 family homes. So it's really just intended to help determine if the property is going to cash flow or not. So this is a no mortgage situation, since in this market, a lot of people may need to pay all cash in order to get the deal. So under this column, you put in the list price, and then in the next column under estimated offer, you have a choice. You can either put in a percentage and it will automatically calculate what the offer will be. So if your client is like, I'm going to pay 10% or 20% over asking, you can put that number in there and it will fill in. Alternatively, you can just enter the number of the offer that they want to make. In the next column, it's 100% down since it's a cash offer. So it automatically fills in the same number here. And then of course, 0% loan, so that's empty. Then we've got the income column, which is your rental income. I actually went ahead and ran comps quickly on these properties. So this is actually what I think the rent would be. Then if you had a mortgage, you put in the rate here and it will automatically calculate what the mortgage, taxes, and insurance would be. No, actually it's the mortgage, sorry, it's just the mortgage. Then the next column is estimating monthly taxes. This has a formula in it to calculate for the city of Austin. So it's automatically calculating based on the offer. And so if the property that's being considered is not in Austin, then you'd want to look that up, or you could use the Austin numbers just as an estimate. Then in the next column, you've got your HOA dues. These first 2 properties are not in an HOA, so that's good. And then in here, and oftentimes that information is represented as quarterly HOA dues. So just make sure that you divide it by 3 before you enter the number, since all of these are calculating what monthly costs would be. And then for insurance, I just put in $1,500 per month. So that's per year. So it's $125 per month. And then, as I mentioned, average repair and maintenance costs are $150 a month. So I put that in. And then, because we're a property management company, I'm assuming some property management here. So I put in 8% for property management fees and 100% for lease listing. Those are our actual fees. And so that is automatically calculated here. Now, something I want to mention about the lease listing column is that it's actually the number, so it's calculating based off of the rent, but it's divided by 24. And the reason for that is that average tenancy is 2 years. So you'll only have to do it, chances are, once every 2 years. So it's divided by 24. So that's how that number is being calculated. So then this column here is calculating all of the expenses, and then you get your net estimated monthly cash flow, which you get some really nice cash flow on a monthly basis with these properties if you're paying cash for them. Jim, I see that your hand is raised. So if you'd like to go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, it was just back to the estimated monthly taxes. You said it's based off Austin. Is that formula, does that have a tax rate in it? And then could be modified for other community rates?
Yes. So as you can see, if you look right here, there's the rate. And so, yes, you could put in any rate that you wanted.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
That's a great question. Okay, let me just see if anybody else had a question. Okay. Now we're going to go to the sample with mortgage. Now it's the same exact properties. The only thing that's really changing is that now I'm doing 20% down. It's automatically calculating that with an 80% loan. And I just put in 3% for the mortgage. And so there is the mortgage rate. All the rest of the numbers are the same. And so over here, you have your total monthly expenses. And then you've got your estimated monthly cash flow is negative across the board. Now, in case you're wondering, even with property management, it's taken out, it's still not cash flowing. So that's just the reality with these specific examples. Before I head back to the presentation, if anybody else has any questions about this spreadsheet, then you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask it. I feel like it's useful while we're looking at this if you have questions about it. Any questions? Jim.
Yeah, a quick question. Are you going to discuss tax implications regarding all this, or are you just looking strictly at the pre-tax information?
What do you mean?
Sorry for the background. My phone's going off. Oh, because depending on the tax position if somebody's in, even though there's a negative cash flow on that particular example, you may still end up in a positive situation depending on how you file your taxes.
Oh, no, I won't be talking about filing taxes. That piece I won't be doing.
Okay, I just for clarification, yeah. I want to make sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, but yeah, that is out of my particular purview on this. So yes, of course, when it comes to deductions and so on, this is not the full story, but for most, it's hard to know because there's just so many factors that are involved. It's hard to know anyone's particular situation, and a realtor is probably not going to know that as they're helping their clients evaluate a deal. So if anybody else has any questions, you're welcome to just mute yourself actually and speak up. Okay, I think not. So we're going to go ahead, go back. Okay, a couple of additional notes regarding the properties not cash flowing with the mortgages. This may actually not be an issue for your client. I have quite a few clients whose investment strategy is appreciation and equity, and they don't mind if they're a little negative each month. That's not my own investment strategy. I personally prefer appreciation, equity, and cash flow, but to each their own. So you'll want to establish what your client's investment strategy is so you can better serve them and not necessarily steer them away from properties that don't cash flow. There's one other thing I want to caution you about, and that's having your clients purchase fourplexes. Investors get dollar signs in their eyes when they see a fourplex on the market because they think that they'll make more money. It seems intuitive, right? 4 tenants paying the mortgage instead of just 1, plus it appears to spread the risk since it's unlikely all 4 units will be vacant at the same time. I highly recommend this strategy with duplexes if you can find them in Austin these days. And in fact, all I own are duplexes. If 2 units are better than 1, aren't 4 units better than 1 or 2? The problem is if you've been around fourplexes, you know that fourplexes tend to be in fourplex neighborhoods. And the reality, at least in Austin, is that those neighborhoods aren't well taken care of. There's a lot of trash dumped there and rents are not reliably collected. There tends to be more theft and other crime, and it's hard to attract tenants who meet your rental criteria. And so the reality, and I am speaking from experience here, is that the landlord pays more money on repairs and replacing stolen items, and they may only be collecting rent on half their units. Of course, there are exceptions. We actually manage a lovely fourplex in Cherrywood that looks more like a Victorian style home, and it's in a neighborhood that is mostly single family homes. If your clients are considering fourplexes, you obviously can't talk about demographics and crime, but you can talk numbers. All right, let's talk about income. When I first started in property management 15 years ago, the general rule for setting rent was the 1% rule. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, namely that the rent would be roughly 1% of the sales price. You bought a house for $150,000 and the rent was $1,500 or thereabouts. 15 years ago, that might have actually worked. In today's market, not so much. The Austin market rental is booming just like the sales market, but rents have not even remotely kept up with the 1% rule. You buy a house in Austin today for $500,000, which is not a crazy number, and there's almost no chance you're getting $5,000 for rent for that particular home. So without the 1% rule, what's a landlord to do? Well, hopefully they'll consult you, or else they'll hire property management so that they have a realtor running comps for them. Unfortunately, some landlords go on Zillow, but we all know that's not accurate. It shows what people are asking for, not what they're getting. A landlord could very well be leaving a lot of money on the table, and I believe that that's actually quite common for self-managing landlords. Some strategy for strategies for setting rent. You could aim high. In this current market with lots of people moving from higher rent areas, this is pretty reasonable. A potential pitfall is that you'll have a smaller pool to choose from since most people have an upper rent range they'll search for, so your property may be outside that range. You could instead aim to be a bit more conservative. Now that's likely to bring in more applications, and then using the strategy of taking best qualified, which is what we do, you'll pick out the best of the bunch and go back to them and ask for their highest and best. We're allowed to do this in Texas, and it's really great. Don't let anyone tell you you need to take first qualified or that this is unethical. We have a Round Rock home that's been renting for $1,500 over the last year. The home went on the market for $1,600, and within 4 days, we had 7 sets of applications. In the end, the winning applicants offered $150 over list rent, which means that our client is getting $250 more per month than the previous tenant, which is an additional $3,000 per year. Okay, you've helped your client buy a rental property, they know what rent they're going to get, and now they want to track their financials. If they hire a property management company, that company will track their financials for them other than mortgage, taxes, insurance, and HOA dues. But they'll receive monthly statements, a year-end statement, and a 1099 for rental income. Some things to note. As I mentioned, average tenancy is 2 years. So you'll need to factor in make-ready costs roughly every other year. And if using property management, leasing fees. The average cost for a make-ready is $3,797, and this is based on our own portfolio. A small property will tend to have a lower cost, a large property may have a higher cost. We track costs in various ways, and I'm going to show you some pretty cool make-ready cost tables that we have. So let me go to that spreadsheet. Okay. So what we've done, and we started this last year, is we started entering all of the make-ready costs for properties into this spreadsheet. And so last year we had roughly 48 make-readies. And so this is based on 48 properties. So it's not based on hundreds or thousands, and over time these numbers will get even more accurate, but 48 is not nothing, and it's actually a decent idea for us to know how much it costs to do make-readies and be able to guide our clients accurately on what to expect, how much to save, and so on. So down this left side here, we're calculating expenses for new properties and tenant turnover properties. And what that means is new properties means new properties to us versus tenant turnover properties where we've been managing it and the tenant is going to move out and we're going to do a make ready before a new tenant moves in. And the difference between the two is that with a new property, we don't have any security deposit funds that we can apply towards damages. And so the make ready costs are slightly higher. It's about $150 difference. So in this first table, and by the way, this has, you can see down here, this particular spreadsheet has multiple tabs, and one of them is just entering raw data. I'm not going to show you that because it's not so interesting, but the result is that we're able to track, and like in this table, by type of property. So as you can see, it's by condo, duplex, fourplex, garage apartment, house, and triplex. And you can see how many of each type we have. The vast majority that we have are houses. And the total average for make ready costs is $39.46. Then we track it a different way by the number of bedrooms. The vast majority that we have are 3-bedroom homes, which of course, in my opinion, is the ideal number of bedrooms that you want to have for a rental. The average costs in the end, of course, are the same, but the cost per bedroom varies slightly. And then down here, we track what is the average total of tenant charges for damages. And so across all property types, although in here it's being tracked by square footage, it's about $548. So we come over here to the ones that only tenant turnover properties. So again, this is where we're applying security deposit to damages. And so we've got the same, this is basically the same as the chart on the left, except now we've included those average make ready damages that are charged back to tenants. And so the average cost is slightly lower. So we also track it by bedroom, and then we track it by square footage. So you can really just, I'm not going to go over all the numbers for all the different, line items, but it's just been very helpful information, as I mentioned, to help us guide our clients. And it's actually really interesting to find out, because you don't know until you actually track the numbers. So again, I want to open it up in case anybody has any questions about this specific spreadsheet. This one, by the way, this is our internal spreadsheet. So this is not a spreadsheet that I'll be sending to you guys, and it's not really useful for you guys. So just to tell you that, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Yeah, may I ask what are some of those costs included in this May Ready cost?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I will actually, later in the webinar, I'll sort of detail some of it, but you know what, let me see. So we have, okay, so this is the raw data tab. And so here's a list: rekey and code compliance check, HVAC check, pest control. We were doing disinfection, we're not doing that anymore. A vacancy inspection, we'd use a third party to do a full inspection. Repairs and paint touch-ups, roof, fireplace, lawn care, tree trimming, plumbing, appliance, sprinklers, cleaning, carpet cleaning, junk removal. So any questions about any of those? Or hopefully that was helpful, but that is like the full gamut of what's included.
And each column is a property. So this is tracked by individual unit.
That is exactly right. Yep. You can see all the way here. Yep.
So in terms of the cleaning, like, do the tenant normally take care of the cleaning by the time they move out, or you pretty much have to do your own cleaning, like the landlord will take care of the cost every time?
It depends. It actually varies sometimes. So we require that our tenants get the home professionally cleaned and provide a receipt for that. Some of them don't do it. And so then there are costs incurred, but that would be one of those costs that would be charged back to the tenant. That said, if there's a major renovation, then when that's done, you're going to get it cleaned before you get it listed. So that wouldn't be charged back to a tenant. And then again, we're going to clean it right before a tenant moves in. That might be a light cleaning, but we're going to do that because, you've had a bunch of people walking through during showings, and you want to make sure that it's ready for a tenant to move into. So sometimes it's, it's a tenant responsibility, and sometimes not. Anybody have any other questions about this particular spreadsheet? Jim.
Yeah, just to jump in there and make a commentary, if I may. You can always mute me if you want me to, if you want to. For those who don't know, I'm also a property manager, and I really support Abigail on these things. She does a great job. Oh, and I'm here with her permission. Keep this in mind when you're dealing with investors. The larger the square footage, you will logarithmically increase your make-ready expense. So the make-ready cost on a 1,500 square foot property versus a 3,000 square foot property is not doubled. It can be tripled or quadrupled, because when you factor in flooring, paint, especially if you have second floor access walls where they need to be painted, that type of thing, that's all stuff that should be taken into consideration when you're dealing with your investors. So just because you get it what you think is a good price on the front end, just understand the holding expense or the make-ready expense may eat up whatever perceived value you get when you buy it.
Thank you for that point. No reason to mute you, Jim. And the thing too that I want to say is that if you're working with clients who are considering properties at different sizes, and you want to know, like, hey, what's the average cost for this size, the square footage, this number of bedrooms, whatever, just reach out to me. I'm happy to share that information with you. So that way you can have a more accurate number to provide to your clients. Okay, we'll go back. All right, well, so as discussed when we use the investment analysis spreadsheet, average monthly expenses for repairs and maintenance are $150, but let's look at the details of what could make up that number. Now, I did go down that list of all the items, but I'll go into a little more. So of course, general repairs and maintenance, which we saw could include appliances, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, sprinklers, and so on. Utilities, this would normally be the responsibility of the tenant, unless it's a duplex or a fourplex that doesn't have the utilities split out, and then the landlord is paying for it up front. The best way to handle this generally is to simply increase the rent by the average amount of the utilities and come up with a reasonable split among the units. Inspections, we recommend having the home inspected at least once a year. Some landlords like to do it more often. We won't renew tenants without inspecting the home first to make sure that they're basically taking care of it. Landlords can do it themselves to make sure the tenants are taking care of the home, but we actually use a third-party inspector who performs a detailed inspection that identifies both tenant care and also repair issues that a tenant and frankly a landlord might not know to look for. We use a company that doesn't have licensed inspectors, but they don't need to in order to identify exactly what we and landlords need. For example, one useful thing they'll do is they'll take photos of any evidence of pets. We can then check to see if the tenants have a pet agreement. If they don't, the tenants get charged a hefty violation fee, and then we put the pets on a pet agreement with a deposit. And then I also recommend a professional inspection once every 3 to 5 years to identify larger issues and defects that tenants wouldn't notice or know about. For example, the roof, the HVAC system, plumbing deficiencies, and so on. A professional inspection can also help you plan for larger expenses that will be needed in a few years. Then if you have property management, you'll factor in property management fees. In Austin, this is typically 6 to 10% of rent collected. Note that if your client does have property management, they'll be required to have a reserve. It could be $250, $300, $500, or some other amount. It's refundable, but since a typical property management relationship lasts a number of years, it's money your clients won't see until the end. And then leasing fees, if relevant, this is likely to be 50 to 100% of a month's rent, and it includes all fees associated with leasing. Professional photos, listings, showings, vetting of candidates, creating the lease, moving the tenants in, and paying agent commissions when relevant. All right, now let's take a look at an income statement. So this is an actual 2020 income statement for one of my own rental properties that's on East St. John's Avenue. So you're getting a little window into my own financials. It's a duplex, so expenses are likely more than $150 a month, but not necessarily double. Although last year, as you can see here, I got lucky and it pretty much did add up to $150 a month. There was a third-party inspection, and that was when a tenant wanted to renew. And then there was a management fees expense, which you'll see is really low. It's just $24, but that's because it's my own company and my own property. So I don't actually charge myself the full management fee, just the cost of the ACH transactions to deposit the funds into my account. And then almost $1,800 in various repairs. So total expense last year was $1,970, not including mortgage, taxes, and insurance. And then at the bottom, again, before mortgage, taxes, and insurance, you can see that my net income was $29,147.29. This year, you can see I'm not as lucky so far, already $24.49 in repairs and maintenance, and that's not including a washing machine that's being replaced at this time. Okay, if your clients want to be good landlords, and I certainly encourage that, these are the standard make-ready expenses that I recommend, and they're what we do with the properties we manage. They'll need to rekey all the locks. In a previous webinar, we covered code compliance required in Texas for rental. So that includes keyless deadbolts, peepholes, working window latches, smoke detectors, CO detectors, if there's gas in the home, and so on. Of course, there will always be general repairs. We have a handyman perform a complete walkthrough to identify all the repairs that are needed. There may be painting needed, maybe just touch-ups, maybe flooring upgrades. If you aren't doing spring and fall HVAC checks already, it's really wise to do an HVAC check because you don't want the system breaking down shortly after a tenant moves in, particularly not in an Austin summer. We get a roof inspection. Now that's free. Of course, any roof repairs are not. We do a one-time pest control in between tenants, and then the rest is up to the tenants. We trim the trees, we take care of the yard until the home is rented, We clean the home once it's ready to list, as we talked about, and again, right before tenants move in. And while the home is vacant, the landlord pays for the utilities. Some additional make-ready expenses that may be incurred. There might be plumbing and electrical repairs. A handyman can typically handle the smaller stuff, but you may need a plumber or electrician for more serious issues. You might have appliance repair, sprinkler repairs, junk removal when people leave stuff behind, which is actually pretty common. And we always have the chimney inspected and cleaned if there's a fireplace to make sure it's safe and to, lower liability for the landlord. When it comes to tracking financials, we of course use property management software, and what you were seeing with my St. John's property was the statement that comes out of that software. But for someone who has just 1 or 2 properties, they can simply use an Excel or Google spreadsheet, and that will be just fine. I've created this one right here that I'm about to take you to, and which I will also send to you after the webinar is over. You're welcome to share it with your investor clients. All right, let me go over there. Okay. So here at the bottom, you can see there's 2 tabs, the template again, and then there's a sample. The template, obviously all the numbers are 0. So we're just going to go straight to the sample. At the top, you can see you put in your property address. So if somebody has multiple properties, they could take the template, copy it multiple times, and have 1 tab for each property. They can also do it if they 1 tab they'll want to do actually really for each year. And so here you put in the year. And then this is super straightforward. It's just a tool to make it easy to track the expenses. And so in the sample, I just put in $2,000 rent, utilities, maintenance. This is income that I'm referring to. And so that would be in a case where a tenant is reimbursing you for utilities, that's considered utilities income. And then under maintenance, that's if the tenant is reimbursing you for a repair that was their fault. And so I threw in a couple of repairs or income items here. So then you get all of your totals across this row. And then under expenses, you've got repairs, maintenance, cleaning, appliances, utilities, HOA dues, mortgage, taxes, insurance, management fees, leasing and renewal fees, and any other expenses. So in the repair column, I just put in $150 a month because that's the average, but your client would actually put their actual expenses. So they would just total up their receipts and invoices for that particular month and enter that there. And then any other items, if there's HOA dues, whatever. So I just threw in some numbers. I put in a couple of maintenance costs. I put in some HOA dues, the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and some other random expenses. And so this totals up your expenses. And then at the bottom, it totals up your net income per month. We can see here, we've got a couple of negative months, but when we get to the end of the year, this property has positively cash flowed. So again, really basic numbers. It's just an easy way to track it. And somebody could add more columns in if they need more columns. And as I mentioned, you just make copies of the template to have more than 1 property or more than 1 year. So again, I'm going to open it up in case anybody has any questions or comments about this particular spreadsheet. And so you can just go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
So may I ask you, the AC filter, does the landlord typically take care of the cost of providing the AC filter, or the tenant will just replace it themselves?
That's
how do you,
that is
especially like a lot of tenants, they don't just regularly change the AC filter. So how do you deal with this issue, right?
Okay, so that is a tenanted expense, but you make a good point that tenants are not good about changing the filters. So there are actually third-party companies out there that will ship filters directly to the tenant's door, and we have built that in, like that's an add-on cost. But so they pay that cost, and then the filter just shows up once a month at their door, and the compliance goes way up when you make it that easy for them. You might also decide, I'm just going once a year, I'm going to give them 12 filters because And you might just pay for it because it's not that big an expense and it's a way to increase the compliance. So it's up to you. I mean, technically the tenants are responsible, but you get to decide to do whatever you find will be most effective in accomplishing what you want to accomplish. Does that help? Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions they want to unmute and ask?
Hi, Abigail. This is Rich.
Hi, Rich.
I love your spreadsheets. These are great.
Oh, good.
What I just realized a few years ago is that the expense categories that I have do not align well with the Schedule E expense categories. When do you make that conversion here? Or are these easy to map for you?
You know, I use a CPA, and these are basically the categories that we use. And so my CPA has not come back to me, nor have my client CPA, nor have clients come back to me to say, hey, my CPA needs it this way or that way. So it's an interesting question, but it isn't something I've had to directly deal with.
I have a new CPA who I don't think they yelled at me per se, but nonetheless, I was told to correct that for next year. So
what are some examples of the corrections?
Oh, their categories are just a lot simpler, like repairs and maintenance, cleaning, they would all be in one. There isn't appliances, there isn't an HOA dues, PITI. I mean, I appreciate this breakout. I need it for my own purposes, but then when you go to hand it off to my CPA, they just want it rolled up into their categories.
Yeah, well, so it'd be certainly easy enough to adapt the spreadsheet where you just say like repairs, maintenance, cleaning, appliances, you just put it all in one line, or just change the, the labels that are there to match whatever you need it to be.
Yeah. I just wondered how you handled it, but
that's a great question. Oddly, I guess CPAs are just used to adapting to, or maybe many are used to adapting to whatever.
I'm sure they're used to it, right?
Yeah, maybe they
Thanks.
curse us, but but that's what they do. Thank you, Rich, for your question. Does anybody else have a question? If so, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
Yeah,
so you
sure.
mentioned every turnover, you do the third-party inspection. So are those inspection, like for example, if the landlord, they decided to sell the house, 2 years later, do they need to disclose those inspection on the seller disclosure or not, like those third-party inspection?
So that's an interesting question. That's not something that comes up with me. I mean, these are not professional inspections. So it's not the same thing. If there was a mold issue, you do have to disclose mold and provide a certificate that it was remediated. But otherwise, generally, no, not just general maintenance and repair issues.
So it's not like those inspection that we do like on, when the buyer buy the house, it's not the same type of inspection.
It's not.
Okay, so
No.
Got you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, let's go back to the presentation. Give me a second here. Okay. Here comes my PSA about being a responsible landlord. A crucial part of being a property investor is being able to afford being one. I know that sounds like I didn't have to say that, but really, I did. It's amazing to me how many of my clients are not prepared for larger repairs, or tenants who don't pay rent, or tenants who do a lot of damage. Of course, we all hope those things won't happen, but of course they do happen. Whether it's this year or next year or in 5 years, things will go wrong. If a tenant doesn't pay rent, you will still have to pay your mortgage. If the HVAC breaks or the roof leaks, you will have to fix those and maybe replace them. This is something I periodically remind our clients about. So what is the proper amount? I recommend that your clients have at least a 3-month buffer, and 6 months is even better. And by that, I mean that they have the equivalent of 3 to 6 months of rent just sitting in a bank account doing nothing but waiting. In my opinion, it is simply being responsible, and it's part of being a landlord. I own several duplexes and I have a total of $18,500 set aside. That money just sits there. Maybe some people would think that's wasteful, but I call that peace of mind. I am never caught without the ability to pay for repairs or the mortgage or whatever it may be. I will give you an example. Last year, we had a tenant move out early, but not tell us. Instead, she had her drug addict ex-boyfriend move into the home to take care of it. Well, he sure took care of it. The home was trashed, but even worse, the refrigerator had leaked and he either never noticed or he never told anybody about it. It destroyed the floors, as you can see on the left side, and there was mold all up in the walls, which had to be removed, as you can see on the right. The cost to the owner after both the tenant security deposit and the insurance money were applied was $13,500. Unfortunately, there's no way to prevent tenants from doing dumb things, so I recommend being prepared. Right now, I'm in discussions with a potential new client. They just bought a rental property in Austin and told me that they spent all their money on the purchase itself because they had to pay cash, which is no surprise as we know in this market. But now they have pretty much no money for a make ready. That's actually what he told me, which makes me question whether they should have gone through with the purchase, but that's not my business. In the end, I don't know if we're going to take them on because it sounds like a disaster in the making or a potential disaster. The problem for us property managers, as Jim can attest to, is that we take the hit from the tenants when the landlord doesn't take care of the home. Okay, we're actually going to put up a quick poll right now. It's totally anonymous, so please do choose an answer, and it leads into the next topic. So Angel will go ahead and put that up. Which aspect of a tenant's experience is most important in determining whether or not the tenant will renew? All right, we've got about 2/3 or 3/4 of responses in. Remember, totally anonymous. Nobody will know how you answered. Just 2 more people. All right, we'll wait just a few more seconds. Okay. Here are the results. The majority of you think it's how a repair is handled, so that's 55%. And the least number, only one of you thinks that it is the move-in experience. Well, believe it or not, the answer is the move-in experience. It is what happens at the very beginning. Tenants want a home that is properly made ready, and they are so disappointed when it's not. This is especially true now that many people are working from home. They want their space to be that much nicer if they're going to spend all their time in it. And who can blame them? The minimum standards are pretty obvious, but we've all heard of slumlords who don't take care of properties, so it bears mentioning what they are. And even if someone is not a slumlord but tries to cheap out, we have found over time that they pretty much end up paying later in one way or another. Either a tenant is bitter and they complain, or they may end up not taking care of the home, or they outright damage it. Or the tenant complains enough that you end up doing the repairs anyway that you should have done all along. So the home should be spotless. All major repairs should be performed. If not repainted, at least touch-ups should be done to cover nail holes, scuffs, and the like. The floors and carpets should be in good condition, and carpets should be professionally cleaned at a minimum. And if an appliance is in the property, of course, it should be working. Some landlords won't repair or replace certain appliances, such as a washer dryer, when they break or die. But personally, I find this to be unacceptable. And so we actually have in our property management agreement that if an appliance is in the property, it must be maintained by the landlord. Now, I know I have a fiduciary duty to my clients, so I do try to save them money, but I believe the financials work in their favor over the long term by treating their tenants right. And this is why we require it. Imagine a scenario where tenants pick a home because it has a washer and dryer, whereas the similar home down the street does not. A month after moving in, the washer dies and the landlord won't replace it. Now the tenant has to purchase a new washer, but not a dryer. And when they ultimately move out, they have one appliance, but not the other. It's silly, it's poor management, and honestly, it engenders ill will. My philosophy is that happy tenants are renewing tenants, and renewing tenants save the owners a ton of money by not incurring leasing and make-ready costs. So I believe in taking care of tenants as a strategy to do what is best for my clients and help them make more money in the long run. And that is what this is all about. Okay, that is the material I wanted to cover today. We'll have a Q&A in just a couple of minutes, but I want to briefly tell you about our Realtor Referral program. This is a robust program we offer to you. We get a lot of referrals from realtors, and this is our way of giving back. When you think of referral program, of course, you think of referral fees, and sure enough, we offer those. So there are 3 tiers. The top tier is when you send us a client for full property management and leasing services, and we do the initial lease. The next tier is when you send us a client for full property management and leasing, but you do the initial lease. Perhaps your client asks you to do it, or you offer it as a gift. And the third tier is when your client will manage the property themselves, but they want us to do the leasing only, which is a service we offer and a service we perform fairly frequently. Please note, these fees are per property, not per client. So the more properties you send our way, the more you make. We also offer a free analysis and review of any properties that your clients are considering. Please understand we offer this service whether or not your client hires us. It is not dependent on that. Our goal is to make you look like a hero, and what better way to do that than to have a second realtor in your back pocket. I know you can do this stuff, but how nice is it to have a second eye reviewing properties for you? Your client is essentially getting 2 realtors for the price of 1. I'll evaluate if the property will make a good rental. I'll run comps for you so you get a second take on that. And I even make property visits upon request for any properties your clients are under contract on or are seriously considering. I'm also a resource to you whether or not you're working with a client. I regularly have agents reach out to me with questions relating to property management, leasing, and investing. We offer a monthly newsletter for realtors to help educate you on all things relating to rental properties so you can better serve your clients. And Angel is going to put that link in the chat box for you so you can sign up. And we offer these free webinars roughly every 1 to 2 months. We're going to go ahead and put up another poll. This one is a list of potential topics. Please choose as many topics as you're interested in, and that will inform the next topics that we actually cover in future webinars. And your feedback is greatly appreciated because I definitely am, most interested in what you want me to cover. About half of you have responded. I'd be grateful to hear from everybody. All right. Let me share the results so you can see. Landlord pitfalls is the favorite, with ins and outs of security deposits coming in a close second. So I'm going to take a screenshot of that. And thanks very much. Okay, last and perhaps most important of all, we offer peace of mind to you. I'm well aware that realtors can be nervous to send their clients to property management companies because you know that we're realtors too. But I am here to reassure you that that will never happen. Not only do I not do sales, I don't enjoy sales, I'm not interested in sales, but the relationship I have with you as realtors is so much more important to me. You are vital to our success, and I would never do anything to jeopardize that relationship. When your clients are ready to sell, you can rest assured I will send them back to you. Please know that clients do ask me sales-related questions and inquire about our services, but I always redirect them to you. Angel is going to put my contact information in the chat box, and please, you should feel free to reach out to me if I can help you in any way. And that is what I wanted to cover there. So now we will move over to the Q&A, and I see we may have some questions in the chat. So let me take a quick look. Okay, so to Pamela, if she's still on here, I did not send the spreadsheets yet, but I will actually, when we send the link to the webinar, we'll send the spreadsheets at that time. Oh, Jim, you answered that question. Got it. Okay, to Jim's point, he does the same type of inspection, but calls it a property survey to avoid confusion. That's a good point. Okay, we don't have any other questions in the chat box. So I just would love to, Jim Smith, I see you raising your hand. So I would love to go ahead and open it up to anybody who has questions.
Yeah, just to speak on your behalf, one thing to keep in mind, if you really want to look like a hero to your client, I'm speaking to the realtors, engage Abigail before you go look at the first property. Let her sit down and go over what it is, the parameters of what it is your client's wanting. Let her work all the numbers. Let her figure out what they want from a financial standpoint. Most important aspect is Abigail will help you. She'll do the dirty work of getting them to understand and think like an investor, not like a homeowner. That way, when you go see a property, you're only going to have to show 2 or 3 properties because you're looking for the properties that match the financial issue, not the roses on the flower bed type of a thing. And you will look great. There's nothing worse than we could possibly have as a realtor gives us a property after all that's been done, and the realtor gave numbers that they had no clue what they were talking about. Then we have to sit down and explain the truth to the client, which usually upsets the client, upsets the realtor, and creates bad bill for everybody.
That's an excellent point, Jim. Thank you for making that point. It's interesting because I had a client a couple of years ago, bought 5 properties. So this is a great story. So they sold a condo in San Francisco and came to Austin to buy 5 properties. So the market dynamics were a little bit different. But anyway, I made this very, like, I visited all of these properties with them, and I made this very point about, you know, hey, this is a rental property. It's different. Like, you want to consider different factors. And they just simply were not able to sort of step outside of this idea, like, I have to be willing to live there, even though they were never planning on it. Like, that was just their own particular standards. And what's interesting now is that they're selling one of those properties because it has like this incredible landscaping, but it's really hard to take care of the landscaping and whatever else. And it just is sort of a specialized property, and it hasn't rented as quickly or as easily as they thought it would. And so now 2 years, I think it's 2 years, maybe 3 years, they're selling it. So excellent point. Anybody else have any questions or comments they would like to share? And we can go back to any of the spreadsheets as well. Oh, we have a quiet bunch. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right, well, that is it then. Thank you all so much for joining. I really appreciate you being here and participating. We will get out the webinar link and the spreadsheets to you either tomorrow or Monday, but within a couple of days. So I wish you all a wonderful day and rest of the week. And again, thank you so much for joining.